When we think of European powers in India, the British come to mind almost instantly, perhaps even the Portuguese or the Dutch. But there was another player, ambitious, determined, and for a time dangerously close to altering the fate of the Indian subcontinent. This is the story of the French in India, a tale of aspiration, diplomacy, war, and eventual defeat. Though the French interest in Eastern trade had stirred as early as the 16th century, their actual arrival on Indian shores came much later. In 1664, under the guidance of the brilliant Jean-Baptiste Colbert, minister to Louis XIV, the Compagnie des Indes Orientales, or French East India Company, was formed. Backed by royal patronage, the company was granted monopoly rights over trade in the Indian and Pacific Oceans. Grand plans were made. Madagascar was to be colonized, territories to be conquered, and eastern riches to be seized. But Madagascar proved too wild to tame, and so, in 1667, a French expedition led by Francois Caron turned its sights to India. A factory was set up in Surat, followed by another at Masulipatam, and eventually, in 1673, land was acquired at Chandernagore on the banks of the Hooghly, near Calcutta. But it was Pondicherry, established a year later, that would become the beating heart of French India. Under the visionary leadership of Francois Martin, the town flourished into a well-fortified and prosperous settlement. It was to Pondicherry that French hopes clung, even as their fortunes rose and fell like the monsoon tides. The French soon expanded their reach to Mahe, Karaikal, Balasore, and Qasim Bazar, but their ambitions would face serious setbacks. In 1693, during a European war, the Dutch, backed by the English, captured Pondicherry. Though the Treaty of Ryswick restored it to the French, it was clear that colonial ambitions in India would no longer be settled through trade alone. The continent was about to become a battlefield. As Europe plunged into the War of Spanish Succession, the French in India were once again exposed. They were forced to abandon some of their factories, and in 1706, Francois Martin, who had guided French interests with wisdom and resolve, passed away. His death marked the end of an era, but France would not give up. In 1720, the French East India Company was restructured as the Perpetual Company of the Indies. With new leadership in the form of Governors Lenoir and Dumas, the French regained strength. Their position was bolstered by control over Mauritius and Reunion, allowing them to command vital routes in the Indian Ocean. But their greatest challenge was not geography, it was the English dot. By the 1740s, the Anglo-French rivalry in Europe had spilled into India. The prize, not just spice or silk, but influence, sovereignty, and empire. The first real confrontation came with the First Carnatic Wars 1746 to 1748. Though triggered by a European war, the Austrian War of Secession, it saw the French, under Admiral Le Bourdon, boldly capture Madras. But more significant was the Battle of Thome, where a small French force defeated a much larger Indian army under Nawab Anwar ad-Din. This was a turning point. It proved that disciplined European troops, even in small numbers, could outmaneuver larger Indian forces. The Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle ended the war, and Madras was returned to the English, but the stage had been set. Now entered Joseph Francois Dupleix, the French governor, general, ambitious, cunning, and determined to carve out a French dominion. In southern India, in the Second Carnatic War, 1749-1754, Dupleix made his move by exploiting dynastic disputes in Hyderabad and the Carnatic. The French-backed rival claimants Muzaffar Jang and Chanda Sahibwal the English supported Nasir Jang and Muhammad Ali with a decisive victory at Ombor. The French installed their allies and expanded their influence dramatically. Dupleix even claimed the title of Nawab Maker, but hubris breeds miscalculation. A young Englishman named Robert Clive changed everything. In a daring move, he captured Arcot with just over 200 men, sparking panic in French ranks. Though vastly outnumbered, Clive held Arcot in a 53-day siege. With help from local allies and a dash of military brilliance, the English turned the tide. The French retreated. Chanda Sahib was executed, and Dupleix, once hailed in Paris, was quietly dismissed. Yet France had not entirely lost hope. In Europe, the 7 Years' War had begun. In India, this became the Third Carnatic War, 175-81763. The French, under Count de Lally, captured St. David and Vizianagaram, but soon faced fierce English retaliation. The decisive moment came at the Battle of Wandiwash in 1760. There, General Arcot led British forces to a crushing victory over the French. Lally was defeated, Bussy was captured, and Pondicherry, the last French bastion, fell after 8 months of heroic resistance. Lally would later be imprisoned in London and executed in Paris. The dream of a French India had ended, though the Treaty of Paris in 1763 allowed the French to retain a few trading posts. They were no longer a serious threat. The British were now supreme. The Battle of Plassey, fought in 1757, may have secured Bengal, but it was Wandiwash that cleared the path for unchallenged British rule. And yet, as we reflect on this history, there is a haunting irony in the decisive battles that shaped India's colonial fate. Indians fought on both sides as sepoys, commanders, and collaborators. Whether under the Union Jack or the Fleur-de-Lis, their sacrifices fed a game they didn't control. The fall of the French was not just a military defeat. It was a sign of things to come, a continent slowly but inevitably being pulled into the orbit of European imperialism. A forgotten chapter, perhaps, but a crucial one.